Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viewers of all types. I'm alone in Finland. This is Eve Online, and today I wanted to talk about ISK and buying ISK because it's something that comes out a lot, and I'm sort of I can understand everybody that's talking about it and the sort of views that they have, because there are multiple different views, multiple different sort of opinions and ideas behind those opinions, and I sort of wanted to share my idea, my sort of thought process about this in general, also comparing Eve to some other games, and the sort of general monetization that exists in Eve, as well as when and where you should or shouldn't buy ISK, because I think that's quite important as well, because it actually lends to some people continuing to play the game. And the example that I've given before would be if you've gone out and you've actually bought ISK. So you've bought Plex through the Eve store, and then you've gone out and you've bought shiny, something shiny, it doesn't matter what it is, and you've lost it. And because you've actually paid essentially for the ship that you bought in game and then lost it, that negative impact is far worse. So because you've lost money essentially. And that's something that could lead a lot of new players who have come into the game, bought something shiny to fly it, without the sort of experience to know what they're doing behind the sort of controls. They lose the ship, and that is very disheartening in general. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this sort of video. But to start this off, so for those of you that don't know, there is a free tier to Eve called Alpha, which was essentially meant as a kind of demo, and there were some problems with it. And originally, because when it first came out, it was actually being abused for doing an awful lot of ganking. And that went on for years, and there is a noticeable player drop off in Eve that sort of correlates with that and stops at the time where it was fixed. To me, that looks pretty obvious, because at the time I had sort of called this out in general, sort of chatting on the forums and things and saying this is a big problem. And there was a lot of people at the same time that, for me personally, I lost quite a lot of friends from the game. So people that I played with stopped playing the game because of this, because they were more into the high sec and they were annoyed that they were getting ganked in a way that there was no punishment for it whatsoever. Somebody could bring several ships in, they could pop a player and then disappear, and they weren't paying for the ability to play the game to do this, so it wasn't costing them anything, and that annoyed a lot of people. And the player count dropped ridiculously. I've showed it in other videos. There's an actual graph of the player usage going from just after 2016 down to sort of 2021, 2022 when it was rectified. And it's a phenomenal amount of players that sort of dropped off. But that was rectified, and in my opinion, at this point in Eve, it's actually one of the better times to play, kind of in part because of that, because there is a lower population density in Eve in general, so there is a bit more space, a bit more freedom, and your sort of combat with the other players isn't that common if you want to just be a high secker and get into the game, which is how I got into the game. Back in 2005 when I started playing the game, it was very sparse. Your maximum player count when I joined was about 4,000 consecutive 4,000 players at the same time, and I was there as all of the records were being set. It was like 1 week it was 6,000, then it was 17,000, 14,000 was a really big milestone as it went on through the months. But I started in quite a quiet area, which was really nice to sort of learn the game and things like that. I didn't have to worry about things. And if you're down in Minmatar space, if you're in Armor space specifically as well, there is a lot of sort of quieter systems where you can sort of learn the game, ply your trade, etc. And you don't have to worry about what it was sort of 7 or 8 years ago, where if you wanted to do high sec mission running, you still had to descan as if you were in low sec or null sec, because there was constant people barging into the safe spaces for the missioning and coming in and trying to gank you, trying to provoke fights. Or in some cases, I had one very specifically where guys came in. I can't remember what they had, but they had another golem. I was running in the golem, and they had a golem and maybe 3 or 4 other battleships, and they tried to provoke a fight and it didn't work. So they all disappeared, and then they came back in. I continued running the mission because I wasn't going to take the bait. And when they came back in on a whole load of battle cruisers, and it was the Galante, I can't remember the name of it now, but the heaviest of the Galante battle cruisers, and they tried to just force gank my ship, and they could have, had it not been for my implants, because they munched through my shield, which was heavily reinforced. They went through all of my armor, and they got through 50% of my hull before Concord obliterated them. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a stupid set of implants in at the time, I actually had in, I think it's Ascaplan, I'm not sure, no, slave implants, that had extended my armor hit points out. That was the only thing that sort of saved me. Because I was running a really heavy faction fit, and they had the exact amount of DPS they needed. They had obviously scanned the ship and knew what the fit was, and I survived by the skin of my teeth. It was fantastic. But that was something that would put a lot of people off, and that is also something where you need to be aware of for the sort of ISK requirement, because if you go out and you go, right, I'm just going to do mission running, I'm just going to do high sec, but I'm going to go and buy the ISK, which is perfectly fine if you want to choose to do that, and you bling out, say for instance, a golem or a paladin or something like that, and you fit it with Dead Space modules, so you've got the best fit that you could run for this. You go out and run your thing, and somebody scans you and sees what you've got and look, right, we can make a lot of money in spite of what we'll lose to actually kill your ship in high sec. So they come out and they give it a go, and then that sort of abject misery of not realising how dangerous high sec is, high security space as it used to be known, because it isn't high security space, it is just slightly more secure than anyone. And then on top of that, you're sort of, you can't replace it without paying in more money, and maybe in some cases it's a case of you've had 30, 40, 50 pounds, euros or dollars that you've put into this, but you don't have any more that month, so you can't replace that within the month. And you haven't been the type of person who does have those assets behind it to grind it. So that's a sort of thing that you need to be aware of when you're buying ISK, is what are you buying with it, what is the plan for it, and how likely are you to lose this. I saw somebody, one of the pirates in Meritem the other day, who the day that the new skins came out, this, for those of you that don't know, at this particular moment, I'll bring it over here, there are Plex deals on with EVE Online, and these are all good deals. I'm not going to say anything about them, but your man is flying a Curzo, and he's got the new skin off of this set, and because of where it sort of comes up, you've got the 6,000 Plex here, but it's not in the 1500 or 1000 Plex. So I know that at an absolute minimum, when this guy bought his ISK that day, because when I saw him, there wasn't enough time for the skins to actually be on sale in the market, he had bought the Plex, and again, that's absolutely fine. But I know that your man has actually spent at least sort of 191 euros, possibly sort of 300 or 500, and that's something that, it's where he is, it's very safe for him, because he is actually a ganker, and he's always on that gate. He's protected by his mates. They don't take fights that are too big for them, they just sort of dock up. So for him, putting that ISK there, there's very little chance of him losing it. He's actually got less chance of losing that ISK if he's buying fits and ships for that particular thing than he would have if he was just mission running a high sec, because of the protection around about him. So it's good to sort of know that in general, what you're going to put the money in and what the risks are. Now, with that being said, I want to actually have a look at a couple of other games, because in my opinion, this is sort of, people dislike the idea of sort of buying ISK in the game, but for EVE Online particularly, it's not something that gives you an advantage. It could give you an advantage in generating more ISK if you wanted to go down that route, but to be honest, if you were going to go down that route, for the most of people, they would already be generating that, and it still takes time. For me, I do a bit of manufacture and building, as people that have viewed me before will know, but my manufacture and building is actually spread out. So some days when I come in to do some of this stuff, I will actually, I think I've got some here as an example. So I will actually be down in Onga and then shipping stuff from Onga up to Jita. And if I've only got an hour to play, if I'm running this if I'm doing it with a blockade runner, it's sort of 7 to 10 minutes of transit. But if I'm doing a heavier load and using one of the bigger cargo ships, not the bowhead, but if I'm using something that is, I've forgotten the name of them, the heavier haulers, then it's a sort of 40-minute transit to get the stuff back up to Jita. So it's most of my playtime for the day is just moving stuff. So there is a sort of time component to escalating that ISK, and it might just be that, as somebody pointed out in the comments, it's a fantastic comment, somebody said I make 2.5 billion an hour, because that's how much I make in my work, and that's what I put into my Eve, is an hour's worth of work. And that's brilliant. That's the good way of doing it, in my opinion. If you want to generate a bit of money, then you can, and you're not spending 20 hours to generate that amount of money and then spending an hour playing the game a month. Instead of that, you've got all of your time for playing, because you don't need to worry about sort of farming and building up. And some people disagree with that, but I actually think it's a good thing, because it makes the game more accessible for people who don't have the time commitment. When I first started playing EVE Online, I was actually unemployed. I just sort of come out of a job. I was badly injured, and I was unemployed for a couple of months, and EVE became my main job. I was playing between 8 and 16 hours a day, and absolutely loving every minute of it. It was a great laugh. Setting up some of the first outposts, sort of joining the corp and setting up our polis and doing mining for the first time. All of this was very interesting to me. And then reading the lore, when you're doing things like mining, sitting down and reading the lore, there are some fantastic stories there. And the little short stories, there is a particular one about Amar torture methods. If you go and read that, it is hysterical. I absolutely love it. So that's what got me into the EVE game in general. It wasn't just the game, it was everything surrounding about it. But at that time there wasn't the ability to sort of buy that ISK. And now for me it's actually an advantage, because I'm out here in Finland. I've got a fair amount of work, I've got family and all of that jazz that needs to be done, needs to be sort of time away from me. So I don't have that much time to play, and the ability to actually go in and buy ISK would be an advantage for me in this. I've had ISK bought for me in the past. Literally, this was fantastic. My wife at one point, she was going away for about a week. This was before we had kids, and she had made a plan with her friends, and the day before she had actually given me a little code for the Plex in game, and I put it in. I didn't realise, and she had gotten me, I think it was about 150 euros worth. I can't remember how much it was at the time, but it was a ton of Plex to be able to do something fun. And she was like, go and burn it, just go and have a laugh with it, do what you do, have fun for the week. Which led to one of my first Dreadnought losses, because I'd flown Dreadnoughts before, but I decided to actually go down the route of trying to PvP with the Dreadnought for small gang stuff, and I lost it, but it was a fantastic fight, and I did get a couple of kills, so it was a good laugh, and sort of very little risk attached to it. And then for myself, I've bought ISK on one or two occasions where it's just been small stuff where I've been sort of stuck. So usually like 5 or 10, but there was one of the packs a couple of years back. So these sort of starter packs that they do, let me just bring these out. So they have these starter packs that have skins and different things in them, and it was a while back, there was a particular one that had the skins attached to it, and I quite liked them. It was the Load Strike skins. So I bought a pack because of the Load Strike skins, and it came with I think it was sort of like this, where it came with a few skill points, it came with a booster, and it came with a multi-character thing. So I had actually trained up a second character on my account, not for any extraction or anything like that, just for fun. So I can see that being a cool thing if you've got the money, and it's definitely something that's good in general. Now, on that sort of concept of it funding the game. You have to remember that EVE is a game that requires a hell of a lot of server activity, and there's a lot of back end to it. So people that are buying Plex, people that are paying for the stuff, are the people that are funding the game and keeping it existing. Somebody said to me in the comments at one point that they play an alpha and they would never pay for the game. I'm like, well, that's perfectly fine. If you choose to do that, that's okay, but you're actually not contributing anything to the game, to the actual sort of back end of the game. You're not paying for the game to exist. And if everybody had that same mentality of, I'm going to run an alpha and I'm not going to pay anything, then the game wouldn't exist. So some people pay for the subscription every month, and some people don't, and that's sort of a good way that it can work, because you can have casual players in, players that aren't as high skilled, and it also gives you the opportunity, if you're a new player, to be able to come into the game and see if you like it, because you're not going to need those Omega skills for the first while. You can test out a lot of stuff without getting up to the Omega level, and faction warfare can be done entirely in alpha. The way that it works is fantastic. So there is that good sort of side of it, that having the free tier, especially in EVE, that free tier there's a lot of stuff in it. So it's something that's very good in general for you to play with, and see if you like the game. Let's look at some other games for a second, because I want to give an example of this from something I dislike and something I very much like. So this is a game that I play an awful lot of, Space Engineers, and I rag on this constantly because, in my opinion, the developers, I am uncomfortable with what they do. They made a fantastic game, and Space Engineers is a brilliant game. It is essentially space Lego, and I absolutely love it. But what they do with their DLC, when they bring out DLC, they bring out usually stuff that it's not really pay to win or anything like that. But my problem with it is that almost every DLC that you go through is essentially taken off of the Steam Workshop and slightly rebranded, which they can do by their sort of licensing agreement. So when you go in, you will see some things. Let me get a good example, the decorative packs, where they put things into these particular games that has existed on the forums already, and there isn't much work required there. Fairly recently they did the big warfare updates, where this was sort of stuff that had all existed. So automations here was where they had sort of put a bit more AI into the game, so that you could program things and get things set up. But this all existed long before this, made by the players. It existed on the workshop, and they sort of made it their own. They put some boxes in, and in some cases when they're doing these DLCs, they don't do them as well as what already exists. When they actually came out for a warfare update not too long ago, the redoing of the gun system still wasn't on par with what had been put into the comments, what had been put into the workshop. And the people who had worked in the workshop one had actually worked with the company. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I know that there was disagreements, and that's why the one in the workshop still exists in a better state than the actual game did. But for this, the updates, for me, it was a bit of a slap in the face at one point, where they brought out a video showing, oh look, this is what we are actually using your money for. When you pay for this, it is going towards, and that was the point, it wasn't going towards the game, it was going towards a pet project to the developers, which would never be a game. Some of the people are interested in AI, and they're doing a lot of AI development, and that's what the things were funding, not the game. And I don't have a problem with a game company using the money that you're putting into the game to fund something else that they're sort of working on, but it's kind of a slap in the face when it's nothing to do with the game. But it was worse for Space Engineers, because what they were working on was AI, and Space Engineers doesn't have AI in it. It has no sort of, it just has basic point-to-point stuff. There is no real opponent for the game, but there is. Some people had done that in the workshop, so for them to say, oh, we're funding this, when it was the number one thing that had been asked for by the community inside the game, I thought that was a bit of a slap in the face. And when they're doing DLCs that are updates to, or not even updates, there are just sort of rebrandings of stuff the players have created on the workshop, and then they're just going, we're putting this out there and charging you for it. that to me is a bit scummy. And in some cases it has been directly ripped off. One of the decorative packs had numbers and letters in it, and it was a direct sort of off of the workshop, no rebranding, no nothing done, just copy pasted, put out for money. That to me I dislike, and I really don't like a games company doing that. However, let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum, Rust. Now, Rust is a multiplayer game. The people usually host the servers. There's a couple hosted by the games company themselves, and it's essentially a little PvP map. Now, when these guys put out their stuff, they have DLCs and they have skins. And what they do, if you have a look at this, the way that they sell their skins for various amounts, and most of the smaller ones, so for instance, there's a cargo box here, these are something that you could buy, but you can also trade on the market. Not exactly comfortable with the trading, but it is what it is. But that funds the continuation of the development of the game, and the game is constantly being developed. It is fantastic how much stuff these guys are putting into it, and between the skins and the occasional DLC, that is where all the sort of money comes from for this. And when you look at it in general, you have a basic game that over the past sort of 10 years, I'm not even sure if it's full 10 years, there we go, over the past sort of 6 years, it has been developed and developed and developed at a very high rate, with a lot of feature changes, a lot of additions, a lot of balances and things like that. And it's the entire sort of company almost is working on nothing but this and constantly reinventing it. So if you're playing Rust and you take a year's break and come back into it, the core mechanics are still there and you still understand the game, but there's a whole load of extra stuff in there that is just brilliant to play, and that all comes off of these DLCs and the skins. Now, the skins are not required to play the game. That is a complete optional thing that you can put into it, and you don't have to. And the DLCs as well are done in such a way that they are in no way pay to win. A good example being, we have the Sunburn pack here, which was some swimming pools, some boogie boards, trunks, and some water pistols. And there's a slight use in the game of water pistols putting out fires, but honestly it wasn't really much in general. Then they had, for instance, what was the other one? Voice ones, where you had microphones and things like that you could talk to people. And there was, I can't remember where it is, but there was a music one as well, where you had musical instruments that you could feed MIDI into and stuff like that. None of it is pay to win in any way, shape or form. It makes the game world a bit of a laugh, but it doesn't add or subtract anything to it. So people that want to support the game can. And the skins are all sort of reasonably well priced. You've got a couple of euros per skin. And again, if you're not a fan of that, then you can throw it on the market and you can sell it off. And it's now at a point where that skin market doesn't sort of explode because everybody knows about it. It's not where somebody buys something and sells it for hundreds of euros. It's sort of well regulated because of the amount that go out there. So in my opinion, that's one of the best ways of funding a game, because that game is still constantly being developed, and sort of the new purchases, which are at a lower level, plus the skins, plus the DLCs that are just randomness, are how they fund it and how they continue development. And that is a very good way to run a game, in my opinion, because the players get to choose it. They get something for showing development, but it's not you're not putting into nothing. It's not going into the pockets, it's continuing the development of the game. And that's what EVE is in general, because although you have that requirement for money to run the servers and things like that, there is also constant development and update coming from it, and I don't have a problem with people putting that money into it. Lastly, let's talk about the other ways of actually getting ISK in general. So you can go onto the EVE website and you can buy ISK, and then every once in a while, as you can see here, you will get sales up. Now these sales will run a couple of times a year, and I'm just sort of pausing at the moment because I'm jumping through a demo, and this is sort of Ganker Capital, and I am flying a massively gankable ship. Let's get into warp. Woohoo! So you get these deals that come up constantly, and you will get deals at Christmas, and you'll get deals sort of through the year and things like that, where you can buy ISK at cheaper prices. So instead of buying it when you sort of like every month or things like that, you can save a bit of coin to the side and you can get it this way. You also have these other things, especially for new players. These other packs are fantastic, where you will get, like for instance, the Glamour X booster. For people that saw my last video talking about grinding for stats, this is the kind of thing that would make that a hell of a lot easier. From what I understand, it would actually half the amount of time to grind for stats. So you could get from a new account to level 4 account, level 4 missions in about a day, sort of nice and easily. You also get sort of the ability, like for instance these ones, where you will get I've forgotten what they call them now. That's it. The the expert systems, where for a short duration it will give you the ability to fly better ships and all the surrounding skills. So for instance, if you wanted to do mining, you could have this, which will give you a bit of omega time, but it will also max out your skills for these particular ships for a short amount of time. So you can put them on to train in the background and build them up, but you will also have the ability to use the ships straight away. So these things in general are fantastic little things, and you get skins and stuff around about these. And with the monthly deals, with the deals in general, you will get things for Omega and stuff like that that is reduced. Now, once you've got Plex, because remember you can buy Plex off of the market in game if you're generating enough money, you also have the likes of, let me just check there's nobody that's sketchy around about here. Crack on the shieldiness. You also have the NES store in game, so this store requires you to pay for things in Plex. But as you can see, there are fantastic deals here as well, where you can use Plex and you can get reduced rates to actually purchase sort of your Omega for the time that you're playing, or you can exchange it. I just clicked that off to see if I got into warp or not. You can exchange it for instance, where are the services? You have some of the expert systems that you can unlock with it, and then you also have, where are they? Sort of pilot training if you want to do multiple pilots, injectors for skills, resculpture and things like that, and then these cerebral boosters which will allow you to train things faster. And just ignore the hypercores, they're a waste of money in my opinion. But this in general is something that you can use the Plex for, so it doesn't always have to be buying stuff in game. You can put them towards this. You also have your skins in general that you can get, and oh my god, I am so regretful that I didn't get all of the Load Strike skins when they came out, because they're my absolutely favourite. But at the moment I would actually like to save a bit of Plex to be able to get these ones, because I really like the white skins. There's one for the Paladin that's on the market for about $1.5 billion that I'm genuinely tempted to get, because I think it just looks fantastic. So there are other things that the Plex sort of goes towards, but remember, when you're purchasing this with cash, you are supporting the game. That's the biggest thing about it, is that you are helping the game continue being the game. So there's sort of that around it. And lastly, I want to mention this one, because this I think is a really good deal. Now, you have multiple sellers, and Marquee Dragon is actually one that I had used for a while, and I occasionally watch him on Twitch when I'm doing other stuff around the house. Basically, if I'm not playing Eve or I'm doing something AFK, oh, I just got scanned by Lumen. Let's bring this guy up and tag him immediately. Add contact, naughty naughty. There we go. I always tag the scanners, just in case. But as you can see here, I'm running with absolutely nothing. It's completely empty. I'm just shipping this to sell it. So, with that being said, back to Marquee Dragon. So, when I'm tidying around the house, I watch this guy on Twitch. But for me, because I live in Europe, your man is selling, and when he sells in dollars. And if I buy this stuff from euros, because of the way that my account works out, I actually save a couple of euros just purchasing things off of him. So if you're in Britain or you're in Europe, this is actually a way to just save that little bit on whatever you're buying, be it Plex or the little packs or things in general. Also, if you're a member on Twitch, if you follow him on Twitch, then there's little codes that will work on top of this, so you'll get an extra couple of %. So it's a way of saving some money, especially if you're going for the higher value stuff. You will find quite quickly that you save a few dollars on it. he's not the only third-party person. There are multiple third-party persons. You should give them all a call out. And although you can be an affiliate, I am sort of too lazy to sort any of this stuff out. So there aren't any affiliate links for me. This is just a shout-out of a possible way to do this. So just in general, keep that in mind. If you are going to go down that route, whether you're buying ISK, you're paying for your monthly subscription or things like this, then this is the way to go, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, I found out the other day that some people at CCP do watch my videos. So I wanted to say one thing in the end, because in my opinion, if you're actually paying monthly for your subscription, you are losing out. Not just because you can pay it at sort of for more months and get a bit back, but also because of these deals, because the way that the deals work, where you are getting reductions every once in a while, you're saving a little bit on your Plex, or you're saving a little bit on your Omega and things like this. It works out cheaper for somebody that is paying for the game every month to actually pay it through Plex and not have that regular subscription. So I think it might be an idea that CCP incentivize the subscription as well, because I would be happy to move back to that if it was sort of the same value as doing it this way and buying it every month, and or buying it when it's on the special deals. So that's something I'd like to see, when if you subscribe monthly, that you get a bonus for subscribing monthly. So for instance, when a sale comes up, that they go, oh, a sale has come up, the people that subscribe will also get some sort of kickback, whether that be skins or Plex or something like that. I think that would be a nice thing to put out to the community for the people that sort of are more regular subscribers and want to keep it that way, because I'd be more than happy to move back to a regular subscription. The reason that I am monthly is because at one point I didn't have much money to be able to run this, and I was looking for the cheapest way to be able to afford it, unfortunately. Which I'm not alone in that. Some people that play EVE have more money than others in the real world, so as well as in the game. So that's something I think is a good suggestion for those of the powers that be in the game, to kind of reward the regular subscribers, and you might get some people moving back to that, because that's something that I'd be more than happy to do. But obviously at the moment it's actually cheaper and more effective for me to do it this way, because you're essentially being disincentivized from regular subscribing because there are these deals existing. So I just think I'd put that out there lastly when I'm talking about this, and sort of a general reminder to everybody: pay attention to what you're going to use it for, because I don't think it's a good idea when you're buying ISK to buy ISK that you are putting at a high risk, unless you're completely prepared for that. If you are somebody who can throw hundreds of euros into the game and it won't bother them, then fantastic, that's good for you. For me in PvP, I have a full adrenaline reaction, and I get the full adrenaline shock every time I go into PvP. I had it the other day when I was in PvP with a Venture of all things. It was nothing to lose the ship, but I still get that adrenaline sort of rush. So if I was to have bought a ship that I then put into PvP and then lose that ship, the adrenaline come down would also be affecting the fact that I'd be upset that I had lost the ISK that I just sort of paid for. So I think you should be very aware of that when it comes to doing it. And it's not a great idea, especially in the beginning when you're not that familiar, to purchase ISK in high risk that's going to be applied in high risk activities. But each to their own, and if you have that ability to do it, then rock on. For me, it's not something that I'd want to risk that, because I know that it'd make me feel bad and sort of tarnish my brain against what I'm doing. But in other ways, when it comes to somebody just giving us, like the wife giving us the stuff, that was an absolutely fantastic loss. I was actually looking through my losses there to try and find the particular dreadnought that I lost, but I can't find the thing. It seems that some of the stuff, I don't think it's missing, I think it's on another character. But yeah, it was a fantastic one. I've lost a couple of dreads and a couple of carriers in my time. The carriers back before they had the logistics capitals, because I used to do a fair bit of logistics, but I had them across 3 characters, and one of those characters I no longer have, so it might have been in one of the other ones that I lost it. But in general, I think that's my sort of general argument for it, is that it's an extension of don't fly what you can afford. You can't afford to lose. But while for me, I constantly fly stuff that I can't afford to lose, and I don't think that's a sort of a good metric for the game in general, because it is more fun when you're on the edge of that. But at the same time, when it comes to the involvement of real world money behind it, that's where it gets a bit sketchy, because it can dishearten you to the game. I don't think I know anybody that hasn't at some point rage quit a game for something that's going on. I had an incident not too long ago where I was at a gate going through Meritem, and I was decloaked while under gate cloak, and I couldn't figure out what the hell went on. And when I was actually talking to Eve about it, they had said, no, you had pressed the button. You had decloaked yourself. And I was like, I hadn't. I wasn't at the computer at all. Like, I don't know what was going on. And it's still unexplained as to why it was. But from their records, I had pressed something. But from my visual, I wasn't at the computer. So something has triggered something on my end, but I don't know what it was. And when that had actually happened, it was just no, I'm done with this for a couple of hours. I'm going to step out. I'm going to do something else. So that sort of fury at an unexpected loss. It wasn't a particularly big loss, but it wasn't something I had expected. So it's always good to sort of be aware of those things in general, as to how it might affect your opinion of the game. So that's my sort of 2 cents. As usual, please put your thoughts and stuff down below, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it, whether you're somebody that will stay in alpha, somebody that looks at omega, or is just sort of looking about. And if you're somebody that is watching my videos that doesn't play Eve or hasn't played Eve, I am very curious to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts on this in general, and why do you or don't you play the game but still watch the videos? Because there are games that I watch videos for myself that I don't play. So I'm very curious for other people's perspective, and in general for the discourse. It's very nice to have the sort of feedback. And this week was particularly nice for me because I was actually on Twitch just in Marky Dragons. No, I was on the CCP stream. I just happened to be watching that, and it when I mentioned something, it turned out that Bjornby had actually seen my videos, and I sort of went, at 40 years old, kind of fanboyish, going, "Oh, it's thin me, it's fantastic." So it's kind of nice to see where the people sort of viewing from different places and things like that. So thanks for watching. Fly safe if that's what you choose to do, and I'll see you next time. Bye.